Is the Quran a hoax? The short answer is yes. According to Islamic tradition, the angel Gabriel dictated the Quran to Muhammad. One day, when he was meditating in a cave, Gabriel appeared, grabbed hold of him, and told him to recite. Over the next 20 years, Muhammad received words of revelation which he memorized and taught to his companions. Or so the story goes. Yet this story is not in the Quran, and first appears in Ibn Ishaq's biography of Muhammad, written a century after his death. The Quran itself was apparently written down 2 years after his death. Islamic tradition also claims that the larger part of the Quran, approximately 2/3, was revealed while Muhammad lived in Mecca. The remainder came after he was forced to flee to Medina in 624 AD. But that is not how they are arranged in the Quran. While very different in content and style, they are ordered from longest to shortest. The Medinan surahs are generally longer, and so are mostly near the front of the book. Just to summarise, 2/3 of the Quran was supposedly revealed in Mecca, and these surahs came first in time. The remainder came later, supposedly from Medina, but being longer, are generally near the front. But the plot thickens. The Meccan surahs make no mention of Muhammad or Mecca, and clues in the text suggest the nameless prophet lived not in the desert, but rather in some place which supported agriculture. Muhammad's name does appear in the Medinan surahs, but only 4 times. Mecca is mentioned once. Gabriel's name appears 3 times. The Quran makes no clear statement about its own provenance. As for logical structure, it is hard to find any links between the surahs, other than a great deal of repetition. Some stories and themes appear again and again. Each surah seems to stand on its own. I have no qualifications at all in Quran scholarship, but this is my analysis of the book, based on what I see in it. The first observation is that many of the so-called Meccan surahs are rather vague. Take Surah 97, Al-Qadr, as an example. Indeed, we sent this down on the night of glory. And what will make you realize what the night of glory is? The night of glory is better than 1,000 months. That night the angels and the Spirit descend by the permission of their Lord for every matter. It is all peace until the break of dawn. It is not at all clear what this very short surah is talking about, although Muslims will tell you the Quran was revealed on the night of glory. In fact, some English translations insert the word Quran or message in brackets, so it reads, "We sent this Quran down on the night of glory." However, this interpolation is not there in the Arabic text. Without the word Quran, it does not sound particularly Islamic. In fact, the words night, glory, angel, peace, and sent down are reminiscent of a line from a Christmas carol. The angel of the Lord came down and glory shone around. The only thing missing is shepherds, as in the nativity story in Luke's Gospel. But more on that later. Another feature of many of the so-called Meccan surahs is stories about Old Testament characters. Moses is mentioned a lot, and there are 7 different retellings of his confrontation with Pharaoh. These occur in surahs 7, 10, 20, 26, 27, 28, and 40. With the exception of surah 40, these all broadly follow Exodus. The longest Bible story is that of Joseph in surah 12, and it follows the Genesis account fairly closely, with only a few embellishments. But there are other stories which are very different to the originals. For example, the story of the Queen of Sheba. In the Bible, she visited Solomon because she heard of his wisdom and wealth. In Surah 27, it is because Solomon sent a talking bird to her with a threatening letter, demanding her submission. While she was on her way, a jinn was sent to steal her throne in order to play a trick on her. There are more tales of Solomon and jinns in Surah 34. While Meccan surahs are not all like this, there is a lot of space given to material from the Jewish scriptures. Conversely, although Muslims claim Jesus was a prophet, the Quran says very little about Jesus the man. Yet the nativity story appears twice. First in time is Surah 19, called Maryam. As in Luke's Gospel, the angel appears to Zechariah, announcing he would have a son, John the Baptist. Then follows the announcement to Mary, initially with words similar to Luke, but the story then takes a different turn. There is no Joseph or Bethlehem, and Mary gives birth alone under a tree in the wilderness. When she returns to her people as an unmarried mother, the babe in her arms defends her and announces that he is a prophet. The Medinan surahs say more about Jesus, and the nativity story is repeated in Surah 3. In this version, Mary was brought up by Zechariah, and the angel appears to him outside Mary's room. After the angel's announcement to Mary, he lists some of the miracles Jesus would perform, including giving life to a bird made of clay. You will not find this in Luke's Gospel, although it is in the apocryphal infancy Gospel of Thomas, which is dated to the late 2nd century. It is only in Surah 5 that Jesus appears as a man. Ironically, this surah also contains the most barbaric verses in the Quran. This is where you will find the punishment for male and female thieves. Chop off their hands, verse 38. Chopping off of opposite hands and feet is also the punishment for opposing Allah and His Prophet, along with execution and crucifixion, verse 33. This surah jumps from topic to unrelated topic and starts with a list of rules about what meat you can eat. In verse 20 to 26, it tells the story of when Israel failed to enter the Promised Land and was condemned to wander for 40 years in the wilderness. Nevertheless, if this surah has a recurring theme, it is Christian belief, which is mostly viewed negatively. For example, in verse 17, it appears Allah is jealous of Jesus. It says, "Indeed, those who say Allah is the Messiah, son of Mary, have fallen into disbelief. Say, who has the power to prevent Allah if He chose to destroy the Messiah, son of Mary, His mother, and everyone in the world altogether?" Allah was so annoyed that Christians say Jesus is the Messiah, son of Mary, which we don't, He considered destroying Jesus, Mary, and everyone else into the bargain. And to those who argue this is merely stating that Allah has the power to do it, this seems like ideation, when an unsound mind begins to think of performing a dreadful act. Jesus is next mentioned in verse 46. "Then in the footsteps of the prophets we sent Jesus, son of Mary, confirming the Torah revealed before him. And we gave him the gospel containing guidance and light, and confirming what was revealed in the Torah, a guide and a lesson to the God-fearing." While this seems quite positive, it does present a Muslim version of Jesus. It is followed by a fairly long section on the topic of how to relate to Christians and Jews. At times it is almost conciliatory, acknowledging their scriptures, and verse 69 is almost universalist. "Indeed, the believers, Jews, Sabians and Christians, whoever believes in Allah and the last day and does good, there'll be no fear for them, nor will they grieve." Yet there are also many warnings not to take them as friends or allies. The surah ends with a scene where Allah has called all the prophets together and is examining them, although He does all the talking. He mentions some of Jesus' miracles, including the clay bird, and then recounts a story about the disciples asking Jesus to pray for a table laden with food so they could believe in Him. Jesus prays, and then Allah flips from being the narrator to being a character in the story, very begrudgingly responding to Jesus' request. In verse 115, Allah answered, "I'm sending it down to you, but whoever among you denies afterwards will be subject to a torment I have never inflicted on any one of my creation." And on Judgment Day, Allah will say, "O Jesus, son of Mary, did you ever ask the people to worship you and your mother as gods besides Allah?" He will answer, "Glory be to you. How could I ever say what I had no right to say?" And so it goes on. Jesus pleads his innocence against the charge that he asked people to worship himself or his mother Mary. And note, Jesus has not said this yet. The Quran claims this is what he will say in his own defense on Judgment Day. This whole episode is very different to the picture in the Gospels. While Jesus fed the 5,000, he told people that life is more important than food and to seek first the kingdom of God. In the Gospels, his enemies demand a miraculous sign, but in the Quran, his own disciples ask for proof. Moving back to the front of the Quran, in the middle of a diatribe against the Jews, Surah 4:157 says Jesus was not crucified, but it only appeared that he was. While it denies the most central truth in the Gospels, the Quran gives no explanation of what actually happened. So what is my conclusion? The Quran is made up of a number of strands. The earlier parts are rather vague and may have been an attempt to give the Arabs a version of the Jewish religion. The latter parts appear to be very different in purpose and are actively polemical against Christians and Jews. Jesus is appropriated purely in order to put words into his mouth. How the Quran came about is unclear. It barely mentions Muhammad or his companions. The 114 surahs are bound into one book, but they don't seem to belong together. You would have thought an angel could have been a little more coherent. This suggests to me that it is not all from the same source. It is the work of men. The story of its revelation is a hoax.